Evening, everybody. My name is Richard. I'm the Managing Director of Baker Baines. Thank you for joining us on what can only be described as the coldest day of the year so far. What we are going to do is we'll probably give it maybe 2 or 3 more minutes, because obviously we know logging online, people have to just make sure that they're warm and that they've got something to drink, and sometimes it can just take a couple of minutes if you're starting up your computer and that kind of thing. So literally 2 minutes time, and then we're going to get started. If you've got any questions and you want to pop them in the chat box, please feel free to do that, and we will chat to you in literally 2 minutes. Right, good evening, everybody. If you didn't hear me earlier, my name is Richard. I'm the Managing Director of Baker Baines. For all of you who have joined us on this chilly winter's evening, I hope that you're wrapped up warm. This is the second event in terms of focusing on your company's product data management. I'm excited about this event because this event focuses very much on the practical. Last time was very theoretical and conceptual, but it's good because it did the job of placing the problems. And tonight we're going to show you some really exciting stuff. Before I get started specifically, I just want to ask if 1 or 2 people in the chat box send me a message to say that you can hear me. Check. So if you can hear me, just pop a thumbs up in the chat box or something like that. Anyone? Oh, fantastic. Hello, Helandi. How are you? I hope you're well. Well, you can't answer me, so you're in listen-only mode. All right, everyone, let's get started. So, unpacking your company's product data management strategy. Tonight, from an agenda perspective, we're going to show you a very, very brief introduction of who we are. Tonight's not necessarily about us. Tonight is about the problems that our customers. We are going to do a short recap of the Techno event that we hosted on the 14th of May, which many of you attended. Then we're going to go into a real life customer story and unpack those problems in a lot of detail. Then we're going to come back and do next steps and have questions. So with that said, I'm going to introduce you to your presenters tonight. For those of you who have joined us previously, these two faces should be fairly familiar. It's the Daniel and Tian show tonight. Daniel has been involved in the Autodesk industry now for many more years than that photograph would actually show. The reason for that is that photograph is probably about 10 years old. But Daniel is an accomplished speaker with a lot of experience in dealing with many of your types of Then Tian is a proud technology evangelist who's very focused on bringing technology solutions to. And with that said, I'm going to hand over to the two of them. Although I see Lynn Smedley Williams has no sound. Try turning it up. For those of you who don't know who that is, that's my mother, and she normally has technology problems. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Daniel and Tian, who are going to really wow you tonight. So with that said.
Thank you, Richard, for that introduction, and thank you everyone online, and welcome to the online event where we were discussing the technology issues or the data management problems that we've spoken about before, but in further detail. So to start up, I want to go into just to give you a brief introduction to who Baker Baines is. So at Baker Baines, we believe that we solve our customer problems through digital transformation, helping them design and make a better world. Although that is being said, we also technology is transactional and adopting technology is transformational. And this is where we're going to focus a lot on today. If we look at the industries that we predominantly play in, we play in the multidisciplinary areas of technology, different sectors, so the build environment, civil engineering, process plant, as well as manufacturing. And we've done many projects in these different environments over the years. So let's jump into the key takeaways. So from this event or from tonight, these are the areas that we're going to concentrate on, and these are the things that we will hope that you take back with you and remember.
So at the end of this presentation tonight, we want you to know what makes up a PDM strategy, and then what other types of companies that we know of use the PDM strategy, and then also how they implemented the strategy in their company and how it benefited them as well. And then also the next steps on how to adopt the PDM strategy in your company.
All right, so I think with that said, it's always nice to do just a quick recap of the previous session for the ones that missed it, as well as the ones that attended. And if you have missed the previous session, please get in touch with us. We can share the recording with you to keep you up to date on session 1. Now, just to recap here, so everyone, and we know this from the people that we deal with and the customers that we speak to on a daily basis, that Industry 4.0 is actually a big thing. So moving forward, and how do you get to being that automated and digitally transformed company? Well, it all starts with design data that you create, legacy data as well as current data that you're creating. We always create data, we often create data every day. And what do we do then? How do we manage that? And that's where product data management, or PDM, comes into play.
Now, because PDM is such an important thing and it can help in your company, we wanted you to see the definition. PDM stands for the product data management, and this is responsible for the management and the publication of your product data. And then in the software engineering world, as version control.
All right, so I think, Tian, if we break that down into further steps, and this is what we've looked at earlier on, the problems that we face implementing a PDM strategy. We break it down into 3 areas. The people that create the data, the process of how we manage and work with the data, as well as underpinned by the technology that we use to manage the data. Often we find that people creating data all around, sharing data outside of the organization or also inside of the organization, use tech processes that's not supported for engineering data. And we can all agree that at some point in time, we've saved data on our desktops, saved it on the network, saved it on external drive, and then we share that out. And the technology that we use to do this can become quite cumbersome and quite messy as we go along, because it's not designed for engineers or designers in that matter. It can look quite messy. So the idea and the message that we brought across on the previous session was that you need a file manager that's made just for engineers. It should understand the complexity of CAD file relationships and CAD files, and of course, to help you find data when you require them. But most importantly, make it easier for you to collaborate with your colleagues outside of the organization. So in this example, we're gonna actually talk about a real life customer. Now, this is a customer that we've dealt with for some time, and the customer does exist. We are at liberty not to share the details of the customer. So unfortunately, we wouldn't be able to mention names, but this is a story that and a journey that we want to take you through and show you how we've solved their problems. Now, this is a really interesting customer story. They manufacture mining equipment, as you can see, some really big industrial machines for the mining industry. The mining, the scope ranges from mining screens all the way to conveyor equipment. Now, the reason we decided to talk about this customer is not because of the type of work they do or the size of the organization, but the challenges they face. Now, many of us online and many people that we speak to will resonate with the challenges that they faced. Now, they've been around for about 35 years, and they've got different offices around South Africa. So their design predominantly takes place in South Africa, but they also ship machines across the globe, ship and service them across the globe. And of course, having this type of manufacturing environment, replacement parts and consumables are a thing for them as well.
We also want to go a little bit deeper into where the company is based. So you can see here that the head office is based here in Johannesburg with us. And then they also have offices in Gauteng and also in Port Elizabeth. Equipment sales and service offered around the world, and also a parts procurement office and an assembly plant also here in Johannesburg with outsourced manufacturing consultants in China.
And of course, I mean, sometimes it's a lot more cheaper and more feasible to manufacture outside of your organization. Yes. Now, if we look at their workforce, you can see that they're fairly not a massive company. They've got 12 draftsmen, 5 engineers, and of course, in their workshop, there's about 45 staff that's in there. Now, so interesting enough, on our first meeting with management team, we began to understand the impacts they're having a PDM strategy and looked at their current pain points. Although the designers were extremely competent in 2D mechanical design, the CEO needed a bit more. He wanted to understand, why are they having these problems and what are the problems and where these problems could arise in the organization that he's seen. So he's seen quite a bit of inefficiencies in processes as well as the way they use technology. And I think in here, if we look at the first point in there, data stored on multiple locations. So that's something that was a major problem because firstly, you're not protecting your intellectual property.
Yes, definitely. And also manufacturing starts on older versions, and that's a waste of money where if you have old versions and you send it through to manufacturing and they manufacture it for you, that's a waste of money because that would be the wrong drawing at the end of the day. Also,
part of this was manufacturing the workshop. The guys were using old and outdated data to manufacture, and this was a ripple effect. It caused problems with machines that were sent out to site, and if repairs or any services that needed to happen on it, they were incorrect information that was transported to site because that changes was not tracked in the manufacture and design phase of it.
Also, hours of searching for the latest version of files where everything isn't stored in the same location, it's going to be hard for you to look for the files and you waste a lot of time looking for the correct files to work on. Also, I think collaboration, share this information and resonate with it in the current circumstance that we're in at the moment.
collaboration is a big thing. And with them having offices around the country, collaboration was a major challenge for them in one of their problems. We also looked at the tracking of files, so file revisions, file versions that they worked on. As Tia mentioned, people were not using the correct versions to actually do the design. So I'm going to jump into a poll question next, and I'm going to open this up. This is two-phased, right? So what we will do is we will actually open up the polls. So see what areas that you struggle with. So the first poll that I'm going to launch at the moment, we'll give you about a minute to answer this, and then we'll jump on to the second. So we can see there's quite a bit of information coming through already, which is great. You know, file searching is a big thing for a lot of people here online. Managing engineering change is also, I think, 50% of people are actually saying that they've got challenge with that. Data reuse as well, we're seeing coming in as well. So that's great. We'll keep it open for another 20 seconds.
Yeah. 36 people of you guys voted. Yeah. Next 20 seconds, let's see. There could be a little bit more votes.
Okay, the poll is going to close in the next couple of seconds. All right, thank you very much for voting on that. We can see that there is quite a bit of responses that's come through, which is great. So I'm going to close that poll. We've got another poll just so you could have a look at it. Now, the objective of this poll is for you to categorize those problems that you've just highlighted in the 3 different areas of people, process, and technology. And this information, I guess, Tian, is quite helpful for us as we move along to understand, to see where the problems are. I can see there's a lot of problems that that people have in process, lots of it in all of the above. So that's good. That's good to hear. It's nice when it's interactive because then we can get a bit of where you are.
I also think that I see now with the results that people that think that you guys might have issues with technology, but I think later in the presentation we might show you guys a few problems that you might have and then also solutions, and you might then realize the problems that you have in your company with technology as well.
All right, so that's great. We're going to give it a couple of more seconds before we close the poll. And I think we've just got 5 more seconds left. All right, I think the poll can be closed now, Tian. Thank you very much for that information and for sharing that feedback with us. That is very helpful. And hopefully, as we go along, you'd see how we can resolve these problems with a data management strategy and the solution that we propose. So just to jump in further, the first part of our engagement with this customer was to assess the users and the people involved in different departments to understand where we're coming from. And as you can see on screen, intellectual property, protection of intellectual property was the biggest. File searching was the next, and that doesn't surprise us because we've seen a lot of that on the poll itself. Data reuse, so that was also something that came up. Accurate bill of materials, managing engineering changes. As we said, you know, if you release a file out to manufacturing and there's changes and it's not tracked, it can be consequential downstream, as well as the people that don't necessarily perform in engineering. So people like in procurement, you know, for them to having the data, engineering data downstream via ERP integration was also aiding here.
All right, then we categorize them into 5 key points where what you can see there, where there's no common data environment for the company, where they didn't have an environment or one location to store their files or their data. To go and search for everything, look for everything around on the computer, and they and store everything in one common environment.
And I guess the next point they're looking at data security. So how often have we ever opened up a file and mistakenly hit save? And hang on, we've actually overwritten the previous version of that file, not being able to go back and actually recover the previous version of it.
And then with no standards, I think there's a lot of, especially here in South Africa, that doesn't have standards set in their company. So I think that might be a very big issue. If you don't have standards, you don't have a specific procedure to follow, so not everything will always work out for you in your company.
And also version control becomes a big factor. Apart from version control, I think collaboration, and again, in time of COVID-19, collaboration has become quite a factor. And in their example, collaborating was a major problem. And if you look at it, if we break it into these pillars of people, process, and technology, they lacked in every single department. So what do we do about it? Let's break it down further to actually see technically how we solve these problems. Now, first, we'll start off with people. And as you can see on screen, there has been challenges in each of these 5 areas. So the customer problems here, just to highlight what's happening here, on the screen, you'll see that there's underlined and highlighted areas. These are areas that we're going to drill down into and show you technically what was the problem. The first one is engineers not having visibility into who's working at any given time on a file. Second is file searching. Data reuse is the next one. Collaboration with team members, but also spending time manually printing and converting files. So, Tian, I think let's jump into the first point and let's see how we've resolved that problem. So in here, let's have a look and see on who's working on what and how we avoid overwriting files. Now, user 1 has logged in. This is into Vault via Inventor. We can pick up the the latest version of that file. We open it, we check it out. Good practice is to create a comment, so the next person logging in can see what's going on. Inside of Vault, the file is open. We can actually see what's happening. User 2 logs in. He wants to access the same file because there is a project going on, and he can see that it has been checked out to a specific user, so there's no edits that can be made. However, he can still preview the file to see any relative information that he may need. So no modifications, but he can still preview, which is great. The next bit is looking at file searching. So again, in this example, we know that file searching is quite a challenge. We've, from the discussions with the customer of 12 draftsmen, when we've done the assessment research with them, we found out that they were spending an average of 40 hours a week searching for the correct version of files. 40 hours can equate to a person that's dedicated just for searching. Crazy, right?
Yeah, that's definitely crazy.
So let's have a look and see how we solve that problem. So in here, again, back into Vault, what we're required to look at. We can see the search function that's available to us. We've got an advanced search where we can search by a property, a file type, a material that's been used, or we can see where it's being used as well. We can go into the folder itself to see what makes up that assembly itself. We can see any sub-assemblies that perhaps being used in here. We can go to the folder, and we can also check the users in here as well. So again, if we go into it, we can rename that file quite easily. We've got a numbering scheme set up in Vault for us. So Vault does all the hard work, and all it means is that we've got to just hit finish. And if we go back to the file, you can see that the file has been renamed to the new numbering scheme that we're going to work off. Back in our design application, Inventor in this case, we're going to go in and we create a shortcut to the file. We can open up the file, check it out, have a look at the bill of materials, and we can also see that it has been renamed to the new naming structure that we want it to be. I think the next bit is the copy design function. So copy design, and we know that within a 3D CAD application, can be risky and challenging because there's links that's created, and there's always challenges when there's links in. So in this example, we're going to quickly reuse and configure a file inside of Vault that can be reused. Now, again, we're going to look at this, the copy of the conveyor. We can see that this has been done before. If there's any changes that we need to make, we can easily make those changes on the copy. We can also include extra files, so we can add a couple of more files to make up this design for us. And in here, we can actually execute two commands at the same time, the copy as well as the rename, and this could be renamed for R&D. If we bring that into Inventor, for example, drop in the file, check it out of Vault, drop it in, and place our assembly. Again, using design automation tools, which makes Inventor such an intelligent program, we can actually go in and choose different variations of our design. Return back to our main screen, go back into Vault, we can go in and check where that file is used and look at the main general arrangement of that file. So you can see it's actually quite easy and quite straightforward to actually go in and copy, and it makes life a lot easier when we're doing it. How about collaborating, Tian, with team members? So for them, as we mentioned, team members sat outside of the office in Johannesburg head office. They were team members out in KZN as well as Port Elizabeth, and collaborating and sharing designs with them was a challenge. Not only team members, this could also apply for stakeholders as well.
Yeah, someone maybe sitting in China, you never know what can happen, wanting to share a file with them. So let's see how we solve that problem.
So again, in here, the implemented solution that we've looked at was using that exists. So out-the-box solutions allowed us to actually go in and have bi-directional syncs where we could either share a design file or a design representation of the file. Now, the first example, this is something that we've come across quite often. Apart from the customer in question, we get this from a lot of our customers that we speak to. How do we share a file but not share our intellectual property? And this is a very good way to actually see that. Now, in here, this is a shared view. We can share a view out to a collaborator that sits outside of our organization. It creates a viewing link for the person. Directly from, we can extend that link to the user. We can go in, and this is just a design representation, so there's no metadata linked to this. We can go in, we can see the exact file that's there. We can go in and actually explode this or bring it back to the design state. We share that file out. It's live collaboration, very similar to kind of social media where we can post comments. Do a refresh on our side. We can see that there's a file being shared out and there's a comment that's been created to it. We can reply to the comment. So there's collaboration that's ongoing. And if everyone's happy, we can release that file out to manufacturing, as you see, using the lifecycle. We can also go in and resolve the comment, and that comment can be exported and saved back into Vault for us at any time. And not forgetting that the viewing share that we've just shared out can expire after a specific time frame. So going back to collaboration, the next bit is, apart from shared views, is looking at a solution that we've implemented that sits outside of the firewall. Now, firewall determined by the company firewall, otherwise specified outside. And in this case, we can see on screen that they were using desktop solutions. So Inventor Professional again, AutoCAD Mechanical, and Vault for managing data inside. When it came to the other members of the engineering team that needed to have access to the metadata of the file and have live links and dynamic collaboration between them, we used Fusion Team as our solution. In this case, what it allowed us to do, it allowed us to go in and collaborate with users outside, share a CAD file, an Inventor file, with all links remaining. But also, if there was a change that needed to happen, or if a person on the other side did a change or had any updates to the file, we had live email communication saying that the user on the other side had made a change, please review it. Now, again, if we look at it from a bigger picture point of view, you can see on screen on the left-hand side, there's collaboration that sits inside of the firewall, which is great. However, when we need to share a file out with bidirectional communication, we can use the Fusion team to actually solve this problem for us. And we're going to dive deeper into that to see how that was solved. So in here, we've got the file that's being released. So it's a released file. There's going to be some changes to that. We can upload it to our cloud drive that's mapped directly from Vault. We use a job processor to run the processes in the background. So as you can see there on Fusion Teams, there's an update to the file that's in here. The stapler assembly for this example, we don't want to keep it too generic. We can open up on the desktop and have a look and see what the file looks like. Now in here, so it doesn't complicate this design too much. We can play around with the constraints of the file, and then we can start perhaps change an appearance. Right, so I think blue is a nice color there, Tian.
Yes.
Back into Vault, we can download the file directly from our Vault Explorer into Vault to actually preview the file. As you can see, there's a synchronization going on, and the changes have been done. We can see where it's being used and the various revisions of that file. So what about the implemented solution here, Tian?
So this is how we solve the problem with people in this company. So you can see that all green ticks in all 5 environments, that we solved the problem that they had in a common data environment. They could store all of their data in one central location now and get access to everything, and didn't have didn't have to waste any time looking for any extra. Also, data security and IP protected. They knew now that all of the data was secured, working from the cloud, so no service could be stolen, anything like that. Also, the implemented standards across the company. There was a set standard for this company now to work from, and everyone knew, and it was implemented into the whole company, so the whole company knew how to work with these standards.
Well, that's quite nice, Tian, because if we go into the next step, I'm sure we're going to see some. So if we jump into our next pillar, which is the process. Now, the data that's been created, we've seen how data has been created. Let's have a look and see where the problems came in process. Now, in here, you'll find that the same message resonates across. The same 5 points that Tian just mentioned resonates across in each of these areas in process. Now, if we look at it, having no standards and procedures in place, that's a big factor, right? Manual bill of materials. I think from our last discussion with the engineering manager, he mentioned that it was taking him around 2 days to actually produce a final bill of materials. 2 days, that's crazy, right? Engineering change is not being tracked. Engineering change, that's a massive issue. I remember from being on site with him on the one day, having that discussion, they spoke about a machine that had changes done after the design was released. So basically, in the workshop, some changes happened. The machine was sent out on site, and a few months later, a service needed to be done on it, and the engineering team worked off outdated design data, and the wrong materials were shipped to site. That cost them, firstly, time on getting the job done, but also the cost of reshipping spare parts and materials. And it can get quite costly, especially when it's outside of the country. And in this example here, we're gonna dive deeper into it and look and see how we can resolve that, but also knowing what reporting, what we're working on, and the reports that we work with. So this can be made up, and if you think about it, it actually adds to the compliancy issues that we try and avoid. Again, data stored in multiple locations, as well as team approvals and review processes not in place. Let's jump into the standard processes and procedures, right? In here, what we've done is we've actually allowed the engineering team, or we've enforced the engineering team or the draftsman as well, to create any file that you're working with using a specific standard. Now, this can be creating a new file or working off existing data. Let's have a look how we've done that. Within Vault, you've got an automatic numbering scheme that you can set up. So, reservation of numbers are out the box. You've also got a form that comes up which forces you to input any information or required information before proceeding. So what this would do is it would make sure that all this company standards are followed and adhered to. Again, the file has been checked out, and we can look at the data sheet again and update that. Any updates that take place here would, of course, update the Vault directly in one go. We can also create a new file from Vault itself. So without even going into the application, we can actually enforce that we create a file that provides by the standards that we've set out to the team. Now in here, it's a simple AutoCAD file that we're gonna create. You have to put a title, you have to put a description, and as we bring it in, we can see on our data sheet that there has been that information that's inputted. So I guess from a standards point of view, that is quite important.
Yeah, I think especially in a company or a big company, especially with the customer that they had, I think that 12 draftsmen currently in the company. That's definitely a thing that should be implemented in a company like that. Standards to work from, like we just showed you.
So the next bit is bill of materials. Now, as I mentioned, speaking about taking 2 days to create a proper bill of materials, let's have a look and see how we solve that using Vault. So there's an automated bill of materials function that we can use called the Vault items. Let's dive deeper into that. Now, if we open up a file, we can see the bill of materials in here. We can search a similar file or similar has been created for a specific file, and we can do a compare. Now, when we compare the two, we can see what's changed between the two and what's been added on. What's great here is we can also look at file versions and revisions of that file that we compare. So released, as you can see, the state history is released. All of the release files we can check and see what's the difference between them. And of course, those bill of materials can be used downstream into different applications or ERP systems for members that may not perform in engineering. The next one is engineering change. Now, I think we've highlighted the importance of this to see where that comes into play. Let's dive deeper into that to actually see how we can capture the who, the what, and the where in the engineering change order. So in here, we find that we've got engineering change orders set up for our files. We can see any related information that's linked to the file. We can see where it's categorized to, so where is it controlled, any comments that have been assigned to it, so it's changes that's required by a customer. In this case, there's some markups that's been done already to the file. There's also supporting documentation. So in here, you can see that this is where the file needs to operate, and also if there's any markups that's in here, we can go directly into it. So it makes the instruction of change quite. There's also a routing process and an auto status. So we can see exactly where this file is. Once it's done, we can submit that into a review process or into different areas to release. Perhaps all the changes have been completed, and we can actually check to see where that file is and what is the state of that file. In here, if we respond, we can close and approve the change order that's in here. Everyone gets an email who's involved in it, and it's a nice meeting for us before we close it. Again, when we're closing that change order, information that is transmitted across the team that's involved in engineering, so everyone is involved. And this way, if it's 5 years down the line, 10 years down the line, or even a couple of months down the line, we can see what happened and who requested that change on that file, which is great, right? Because keeping that information is always valuable to any design organization. Again, going into it, we can see the change order is now closed, and that file can be released back out for manufacturing, those changes that happened to it. And if we go back to the manual reporting, so this brings up a topic of again, chatting to the engineering manager not too long ago, we found out that there was a specific machine that was designed for a specific area, and the material used needed to be a very specific criteria on the materials. And what happened, designed machine using, not considering the compliancy side of it, and the machine went out to site and had to come back. Now that was, of course, wastage of lots of money and time. Let's have a look and see how we can actually detail and track this early on in the design stage. Now, if we go into it, Vault has a very nice reporting tool. We go into the project, we can look at the material handling plants that we're working with, go into the conveyor, and we can see the dependent stats associated to it. Now, again, in here, we can report via life cycle state, for example, material chart. And I think material chart is important because in this case, material was a factor that was considered, right? And if we go deeper into this, we can actually see that in the CAD application, when someone's designing it, this could be exported out, as you can see on screen. However, when we go into the CAD side of it, when the designer or engineer is working on it, we can actually map out to see what material is being used where and how much of it in the design itself. Now, in here, color coordinate colors and see what's happening. And if I look at it, we can filter by material. And as you can see on screen, if we see that happened and material that's being used, and we can actually provide a report earlier on and not make the mistake of using the wrong material. So enforcing standards and being compliant is a great factor. And using a data management solution like Vault, for example, as you see on screen, can resolve these problems earlier on before the machine is released to go on site. So again, lack of team participation and approval was also a factor that was considered here, as well as data being stored in multiple locations.
Now, the solution that we implemented, look at all of those green ticks that you can see there. That's a very good thing. So again, with process, the same as with we had with people, we solved the problem with a common data environment, as well as implemented the standards that you can see in the video, the version control, and now they can actually collaborate and send or share files out to people outside of the firewall or outside of the company.
And I think also maintaining, knowing what changed and where from the engineering change order point of view has been a big factor here.
Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to jump through this. So again, having this said, these areas of concern has been resolved via the data management strategy that was implemented. If we look at the next pillar here, which is technology, now we know that the customer using our data technology, they had 2D workflows. Data security was a massive problem for them. Collaboration, of course, was also a problem for them as well. And not forgetting the version control.
And also jumping back to the poll question that you guys had previously, the first question, not a lot of you guys said that you have problems with technology. So let's see what problems you actually have and how we can solve them.
Okay, so looking at the customer problem again, we see that, again, firstly, Windows stored on data stored in Windows Explorer. And we know from our previous session and previous discussions that Windows Explorer was not made for engineers. Actually using outdated files. Now, this is a common problem, and I'm sure people online would agree with me on this, that how many times does this happen to you where you're doing a design work, the workshop needs to manufacture a specific component. It has been done in the past. The artisan doing the job pulls out an old drawing from his cupboard and goes ahead and manufactures it, not knowing that there's been a revision to it or it has been changed quite a bit.
And that wastes a lot of time and a lot of money.
Again, also looking at time, sharing data via an ERP system, perhaps downstream in the organization, where procurement can get access to the latest bill of materials, and also using latest technology to actually prevent this data loss in that way. So let's jump deeper into that, Tian, and let's have a look and see how we can resolve these problems. So firstly, the implemented solution that we've used here is Vault Thin Client. Now, Thin Client is a very, very nice solution that comes with Vault Professional and Workgroup. And what you can do is you can actually allow the workshop manager to have access to the latest design. So the latest release design. What happens is he would go in, he would open up the Vault client, he'd look at the latest designs that's there, he can print it out or he can view it, and when he's having his engineering meetings with his team, he can make sure that they're working off the latest released file. Now let's have a look at it, how it looks. So the Vault Thin Client, web-based, as you can see, it's a thin client. Logging in is quite straightforward. You can see the Project Explorer with all the files that's related to the design. You can also do search. You can also perform search functions in here. Going in to have a look at the latest drawing that's there. Apart from that, what's great about this is we can preview the file, but we can also see the components that make up that design. So assembling it becomes quite easy because we know what goes where. Again, this an exploded assembly that we can see what needs to happen. Also a full parts list that we can work off.
And also I think that we should maybe mention to the attendees that Vault Thin Client, you don't need an installation that needs to happen in your company. This is all web-based, so if you have internet, you'll have access to Vault Thin Client.
And that's a good point, Tian, because the Thin Client is a free application that comes within the Vault system itself. But let's dive deeper into the other areas and often forgotten areas where integration to ERP systems become a challenge. Now, in this particular example, the customer is using a SAP in the environment, and for them, the big problem was having that bill of materials be pushed downstream for the non-engineering team members, like procurement, for example, to participate in. Now, with the technology here, there's different areas that we can integrate into. So if you're using an ERP system like SAP, for example, Microsoft Dynamics, another common ERP solution that lots of people use, data management, document management solutions like SharePoint, for example, as well as PLM solutions like SAP PLM, right, for product lifecycle management. This is something that is being integrated, and we're seeing a lot more of it. And how do we transfer or manage our bill of materials downstream? So in this case, what we've done was we've actually used the integration from Vault to SAP to solve this problem for the customer. So firstly, there's a couple of methods that you can do. You can transfer your bill of materials from your item master directly from Vault into SAP. As you can see, there's an integration tool here. So there's no going outside of Vault. Everything can be done via Vault itself. Looking at the bill of materials again, it's all we do is just go in and create the SAP link. And what it does, it creates the SAP bill of materials for us. From the item master in Vault, we can choose the item master in here. We can submit that. And once that's submitted, of course, make sure that the information inputted is correct. And every time we hit submit, it creates the SAP bill of materials in the backend. Again, from items, so properties, if we update our properties, that property that we updated can run across to different departments of the SAP. Let's look at it from the CAD side of it. So inside of Inventor, while we're doing our design, if the right information is inputted firsthand, that can be used downstream. In this example, you can see that we can have a look and see what's being used, the material that we're using. If it's weight, that's an important factor that can be also included to ensure that when we ship it out, we're actually working off the right weights. Very quick assembly of it. We can bring this into our drawing environment next, where we'll be able to see how this works. Whenever we hit save and check it in, it goes into Vault, and you can see the bill of materials. It's pretty straightforward in this one. It's just the tire and the rim. And if we create a drawing, we can drop that drawing file in. And again, we've got the SAP integration to guide us through. So whatever happens in here, whatever changes happens in here, it's downstream from Vault to SAP. If we go into Vault, into the SAP side of it, we can see that if we go to each of the files, as well as the drawing, we can see that it has updated across. Again, we can add or edit to this bill of materials if there's something that's not being used in the design, like grease or paint or oil, that could be added in, and we can have that run across to SAP. That's quite great, right, Tim?
Yeah, I also honestly feel like I really hope that you guys saw that technology really does play a very big role in each company across the whole world. And now we can see that the solutions that we implemented solved all of those problems that you can see there in all 5 factors.
So let's have a look and see the implemented technology that we've discussed. Firstly, it was Autodesk Vault Professional for the engineers, the drafters, as well as the non-engineering team members, right, that needed to have access to the design or engineering data downstream, like we've just seen for the integration of SAP. Again, 3D design, intelligent design using Inventor Professional allowed us to have that parametrics where we could use design automation, for example, as well as directly integrated into our Vault solution.
And then also using Autodesk AutoCAD for detailing. So there's a lot of people that prefer using AutoCAD for detailing, as they use Inventor Professional maybe just for creating the 3D model or the parts for the company, and then over to AutoCAD to do the 2D modeling with dimensions and text, etc. And then also this does play a very big part in the technology factor, where we implemented the iAdopt methodology, where we assessed, we educated, and we consulted the company to solve all of their problems.
I think, Tia, going back to the initial point or previously discussed point where we spoke about technology being adopted and how it transforms businesses. And you can see from the problems that we've showed you and the solutions adopting that technology had great impact on the team that worked within engineering as well as being able to share and collaborate. Now, if we go into looking at the customer today, now in 2017, when we've first had integrations or discussions with them regarding their challenges, we found that there've been quite a bit of challenges, right? So looking at intellectual property management, so protection of intellectual property, file searching, data reuse, bill of materials, integration to ERP, as well as managing change. And I think these are some of the problems that we've seen online as well from people that are on this webinar. And the customer today, after all of that work and implementation work that has been done, we have solved the areas of concern in people, process, and technology, also in the 5 pillars of having a single common data environment to share and to use files, protecting their intellectual property, all the way down to collaboration. And I guess, again, going back to collaboration being one of the major factors in today's time, this has been solved quite easily using a data management solution.
And I also think with our biggest mission as well, that is what we are trying to do for the companies, where we try to find their problems, and then with iAdopt also go and solve within people, process, and also technology, and make the company better, faster, and more efficient.
Okay, so some just to give you some feedback on the words from the engineering manager. So it's words from the customer. I thought it was great to share this with you because we found that, you know, over the time of implementation and over the years, they've had significant gains by having a data management strategy implemented. And tools like Autodesk Vault, Inventor, as well as AutoCAD had enhanced their workflows. And I think for me, you know, resonating back to the problems that they had, finding files for them was a challenge. And you can see on screen how quick it was.
And also where he said sharing files with the team members, that they had access to host the features where they used their old system.
Also not figuring the bill of materials, that's being used downstream as well. What do you think?
Yeah. Yes, yeah.
So again, from the engineering manager, let's have a quick see and hear from what the CEO had to say. And I think this was the important factor because he was involved in the initial phases as well as the end of the implementation. But what resonated greatly for me, because we had a call with him not long ago during lockdown, was to understand where they are and how data management has helped them during these challenging times.
So the CEO mentioned that he was intimidated by the concept of the PDM strategy, and he didn't think it was a force for his company and his people working for him.
So at first, I think with any implementation of any new technology that you may use in your environment, it is always intimidating, and we're always scared of it and shy away from it. But hearing from the CEO itself actually brought us a lot of joy, because for him, it was actually quite affordable and scalable for his company. And checking in with him recently regarding lockdown and how they manage and how they work, we found that the design productivity has not stopped because they implemented the collaboration tools earlier on.
And also currently, where I think the most important part at the moment is where the whole world is currently sitting with COVID-19 crisis, and collaboration is probably the most important part, playing a role there, where you want to share and not come to a standstill with your company and not being able to do anything because then you won't make any money. So collaboration, sharing files, carrying on with your work is probably the most important part at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's some great words from the CEO
yes.
on this. So again, just to recap, a product data management strategy is, firstly, a single source of truth. So a common data environment where product is stored in a central location and control permissions are adhered to.
Also data security to protect your IP, where backups performed regularly to prevent loss due to hardware failure, and also data not overwritten by the engineers working on the same files.
I think also when it comes to implementing standards for quality as well as compliancy, we see that having a data management solution would allow us to maintain and adhere to these standards.
Also version control, where we don't want to work on outdated versions, controlled file versioning and release of accuracy, and then also manufacturing of the latest released files.
And last but not forgetting, the collaboration bit, which we know is a big factor at the moment. So I think what we're going to do next is we're going to open up the poll question, and this is more a self-assessed poll question where we give you the opportunity to assess yourself on these areas of data management. Now, while we do this, if you want to ask questions, please feel free, use the chat box, and we can answer your questions while we do this. I'm going to open up the poll now. So in the poll area, there's 5 questions that we can ask on you. We will ask you on. I'm going to open up the first one, which is the scorecard. We'll give you a minute or just under a minute to answer this, and we'll move on. It's just yes or no question, so it will be quite quick. So the poll is launched. You can go ahead and answer them.
And so far, about 40% of you guys voted.
Which is great. We'll give it a couple more seconds before we move on to the next question. Again, if you have any questions at the moment, please use the chat box, and we could answer your questions while we do the polling. All right, so I'm going to move on to the next question. Okay, I'm going to launch that. Again, you've got about a minute to go through that.
Again, guys, it's just quick questions and quick answers. Yes or no. Let's see what you guys are voting.
So some really interesting responses coming through, yeah?
A lot of yeses.
Okay, excellent. So I'm going to close this, and we're going to move on to the next poll. Again, a minute to answer this. So not many questions coming in the chat box. I think everyone's busy answering the poll questions. Hey.
Yeah. Oh, a lot of no's for that one.
Okay, interesting. All right, so we're gonna give it a couple of more seconds before we move on to the next poll. Excellent. All right, the next poll to be launched. Okay, again, a minute. You can get that going.
Also, I think that's an important question. This one is very 50-50.
So good results coming in. Okay, just a couple of more seconds, and then we'll move on. All right, so the final question in here, I'm going to launch that, and it'll be a minute.
I also think that this is maybe the interesting question where we can see how many of you guys are actually collaborating outside of your company.
So just a couple of seconds more. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for voting. That information is very valuable for us to understand, to see that a lot of you share the same problems that we've mentioned today, and there is help. There is a solution that we can resolve them with. So I think I'm going to jump back into hand over to Tiaan to take us to the last bit of the presentation, which is the key takeaways.
Yeah, so jumping back to the key takeaways is you should know by now what makes up a PDM strategy, and then also the companies that use the PDM strategy, and then I hope by now that you guys would know how to implement this into your company using the PDM strategy, how this would benefit you as a person or as a company, and then what the next steps will be to adopt this PDM strategy.
All right, excellent, Tiaan. So I think what we will do now is we will open up for questions. I think people were busy doing the polling questions and perhaps didn't have a chance to do it. So we'll open up the questions. You can type your questions in the chat box, and we can answer them as they come in. Okay, so I just want to open up the questions poll. I see there are a couple of questions coming in here. So there's a question here saying, is it not high risk to integrate system processes and data storage in a vendor software framework? So to understand that question better, I think I'm assuming you're mentioning something about storing your data on the cloud, right? And to answer that question, we have so Autodesk has quite a high data security standard when it comes to the cloud security. It meets quite a bit of the ISO standards that's related to cloud and data protection on that. So the process over here is storing data, however, sharing data. The data is generally stored in your vault, in your environment or your local on-premises, and specific data files are shared out. So in both scenarios, you'd find that because it has such a high security level, that you share is protected quite heavily, but also your data is still on premises. So the main data still lives on premise, and it is controlled by access that you give out to specific people who need to either view or make modifications to the file.
And also, Daniel, if I can just jump quickly into this question. About a year or 2 years ago, we had a client that actually the company got broken into and the server got stolen. So all of the data that they stored was stolen. So there was nothing saved on the cloud and they had to redo everything. So if you save your data on the cloud and someone breaks into your company and they steal your server, you will still have all of your data with you.
Yeah, I think the next question is by Matt. Thank you, Matt. So the question reads, in terms of pricing, what type of yearly fees are we looking at? Let's say a company has 10 engineers that work on 10 different CAD machines. That is a number that can be estimated. Okay, so again, it's based on a user. So a CAD user would, of course, consume a user license of the data management vault, as well as the design tool, so Inventor. And it's not necessarily just for Inventor. If you are using a different vendor, for instance, a different CAD vendor, you can also integrate Vault data management solutions for non-Autodesk vendors as well. And it will be based on the CAD user that needs to create data documents as well as manage those documents within the system. Non-CAD users, you can share license between the two because they're not actively using it. And that's something, I think, pricing in exact figures is something that we can pick up after this, if that's okay with you. So the next question is, what is meant? What I meant is a lot of metadata. So the vendor stopped supporting the software and lost the ability to use the metadata. Okay, so I think Michael, let's pick this up, and I think it may be a deeper discussion that we may need to have on this to see what data has been lost and why that data has been lost, and you know, what was the consequences behind that. I do know that data stored on the Autodesk servers or the Autodesk platform, apart from cancelling of any subscription to that data or access to that data, you do have a specific time frame where you can have that data removed. But I think it's something that we can pick up after this.
Is that all the questions that you guys have?
All right, so see another question coming up here, sent privately. Okay, now it's coming up. Successes with production numbers were improved with percentages. So percentages of it, as you've seen in there, that the areas of concern with regards to data that would be managed or before implementing a document management or data management solution was a problem with loss of data and data being not transferred across. So file version management changes. That has been, once it's completely adopted and used within the system and users are making use of the process, those numbers have dropped down significantly. I can give you exact figures if you'd like, but on a percentage point of view, I think we were 90% efficient with regards to post-implementation of the product data management solution. Thank you. So, any more questions that we have? Tian, anything that you see coming up on screen?
No, not at the moment. If you guys have questions, guys, please feel free to ask us.
So how there's another question that's come in. Can the data management solution Vault be installed on a cloud platform? Yes. Things like AWS or Azure, you could have Azure or AWS host your data management server, and that can be accessed from teams that may not sit in the same region as the rest of the team. It's also quite nice because in that way it's easier manageable in certain aspects, as well as having the data in a cloud environment allows you to access the files just by having an internet connection and, of course, the right permissions to access. So, Andrew, I think the CPD codes for Extar session we can pick up later. I think that's handled by Simon McKee himself. We can have a chat about those CPD codes after the presentation is done, if that's okay with you. Thank you for that. So great responses. Thank you for joining. I think if you have any more questions, we've gone 7 minutes post the time. So I think what we can do is if you have any questions, you can always touch base with us. Our details are on screen. Connect with us via LinkedIn. Check out our Baker Bains Facebook page. Connect with us with Instagram, Twitter, as well as you can catch previous recordings of webinars on our YouTube channel. So if you've got any questions post the webinar, you could always send us an email or at info@bakerbains, or check us out on any social media platform, and we'll be more than happy to answer them for you.
Thank you very much, guys, for joining. We appreciate you guys attending, and we got really nice and good interaction with you guys on the poll questions, answers. Our questions, we will get back to you on that as well if you need any more information.
So thank you very much for spending your afternoon or early evening with us. We really appreciate the feedback, and we really hope that what we've presented today with regards to the solutions to the problems that you may have will resonate in your organization. And if you don't have a data management strategy implemented at the moment, it's something that you would look at in the near future. So thank you very much, and
thank you guys.
Have a great evening ahead.